Welcome to the Most High Show, made by and for people in recovery, a show about recovery, spirituality, and being human. Our mission is to provide impactful, community-driven media that informs, empowers, and inspires positive change. Real people, real stories, real life. This is the Most High Show. Before we get started, we want to be really clear. Nothing shared here is on behalf of any recovery program, treatment facility, or organization. We're speaking only from our own experiences. We support all pathways to sobriety and recovery, and our goal is simple: to help people feel less alone and suffer less. Today, on her first ever podcast, we have writer, artist, and certified peer specialist, Evelyne-Anne, is it
Clausen.
Clausen. There is a whole letter missing from your name.
Oh, no.
So sorry.
It's all right.
Clausen. Evelyn-Anne Clausen. She is here to talk about mental health in a way that feels human, not just crisis-based, not clinical, and not isolating. So thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And you drove all the way from LJ to be here with us.
I did. It might be snowing tomorrow, so I hopefully I'll get home. But yeah.
Yeah.
How far is that?
It was about an hour 45. So yeah.
Wow.
But I've got family in Atlanta, so I can stay with them if I need to. Yeah.
Wow. But I mean, getting snowed in the mountains sounds like
Not the worst thing.
Best thing ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
honestly.
so terrible.
Yeah.
Awful.
Mm-mm.
God.
Horrible.
But let's just jump right into a little bit of your story and your history, how you got where you are today. So what are some of your early experiences just with mental health and early symptomology?
Yeah, so I had a pretty stable childhood, honestly, but around the time I went into middle school, I started hearing things that other people weren't hearing. And with that came some really intense moods that I had no context for, and it looked like just being so emotional about little things. And at the time, my parents and sort of teachers and stuff just thought that I was just like very sensitive, or that it was just puberty or like adolescent angst, all that kind of thing. And I had seen enough on TV and in movies and stuff to know that like hearing voices meant crazy, like really crazy. And so I just decided that like that was not something that anyone could ever know. Mm-hmm. And so for years, a few years at least, like I just didn't tell anyone. And it was bad. My school really suffered for it. Parents and teachers could tell that something was going on. Like I'd gone from being a pretty outgoing, bright kid to like dropping out of stuff and failing all my classes and stopping my sports teams and, all that kind of thing. And then finally I told a guy I was dating when I was 15, which, 15-year-old boys are known to be the most emotionally mature,
empathetic
and
Kindest,
understanding.
sweetest,
and, yeah. And so of course his response, and, I'm still friends with this person now, so no offense to him, but was just that it was like too much for him to handle. And he broke up with me like right away, and just said like, yeah, that's too much. And so that kind of reinforced my idea that like, this is not something that anyone can know about. And I think, it finally got to a point where I just had to say something because I was failing out of high school, and people needed to know why, or were asking me why. So I finally told my parents, and they were really understanding, as best as they could be. They didn't really know what that meant or what to do with that, but they sent me to a psychiatrist who at the time diagnosed me with schizophrenia, just kind of like right off the bat, just was like, yeah, you hear voices, that's schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. You have to take this medicine forever, and that's your life now. And mm-hmm. So that's it. And it sucked. Like it was not something that you want to hear when you're a teenager, that like this is just you now, and like this is just what you have to like live with. And so that was kind of where things started for me.
And did you ever go to a different doctor and maybe fight that diagnosis, or was it one of those it's like, okay, yeah, this might actually be what's going on?
Yeah, I think I sort of took it as true because I was someone that just kind of believed in authority and thought like, if a doctor says it, like they know more than I do, so who am I to say otherwise? And so I was really kind of lucky that I got into college through weird weird ways that are yeah, maybe not worth getting into, but not weird ways, sorry, but just like
That just sounded
yeah,
like
yeah, that
so like
sounded
back
really,
rooms,
really
like-
sketchy, really sketchy. No,
Like blink twice if you need help.
I applied to a really small college that was really cool and basically took me at my word that like I was dealing with what I was dealing with and was willing to like support me in that, and thought that I was bright and could do the work, and so let me come and do that. So that was amazing. But so that was up in Maryland where I was going to school, and I've got a doctor up in Baltimore who specialized in adolescent bipolar disorder. And so he was the first person who suggested, like, maybe this isn't schizophrenia, maybe this is bipolar disorder with psychosis, which if you look at like the DSM diagnostic stuff, there's a lot of overlap between a lot of these different diagnoses.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've learned and feel really strongly about is that diagnoses are not hard science, honestly. You know, like it's someone's best guess kind of at what's going on with you based on the symptoms that you're able to describe to them.
Yeah.
And not only are we not perfect at describing our own experiences, doctors aren't always perfect at hearing what we're saying. So there's a lot of there's a lot of wiggle room in between some of these diagnoses. And so that was helpful because it meant that they tried some different medicine that was a little bit less just like paralyzing and kind of made me feel a little bit more like myself. But I was still really struggling. And honestly, part of my story at this point was that I felt like I hadn't done anything wrong, and so therefore I shouldn't be responsible for what was happening. You know, like it was kind of that feeling of like, well, I didn't cause this, so I shouldn't be the one that has to fix it. Like someone else should come and fix this for me because I didn't do anything. And that turned out to not be the most helpful attitude. You know, like maybe I had some righteousness on my side or whatever, but that held me back for a long time because I kind of had that sense of like, well, you all need to figure this out. Like you all need to fix this and like give me something to make this go away. And the idea of like doing things that I could do just wasn't really in the picture yet. And so I was hospitalized a bunch of times. Probably once a year, I ended up going and spending about a month in a psychiatric hospital. And every time it would seem a little better, and I'd maybe learn a few like coping tools or things like that, that for a few weeks or months, I'd be like, oh yeah, I can manage this. But inevitably, I would just kind of fall back into either a pretty severe depression, or I would get these kind of manic periods where for me, sometimes mania gets depicted as like really fun and you're like really up and flying. And for me, it was just anxiety and just like my brain going too fast and feeling uncomfortable and angry, and just it wasn't a fun sort of up.
Yeah.
It was just a very like unpleasant, I can't stop it kind of feeling. And then the psychosis stuff is happening throughout all of that. And so in my 20s, I finally saw another doctor back in Atlanta, who I still see now. I've been seeing him for 20 years, and he's phenomenal. But he was kind of the first person that was like, you can do more than you're doing. Like, you can live a different life than you're living. And better is possible, basically, which was kind of the first person who'd honestly presented me with that idea that, like, you're not stuck in this, and you're not, like, irreparably broken in some way that can't ever be recovered. And so he really helped me find medicine, especially, that worked, and we tried tons of things. It was exhausting and frustrating, and trying thing after thing and having side effects, and but we kept at it until we found something that the side effects were tolerable and made me feel like I could live in the world. And and so kind of the short thing from there was finding out about peer support, and the idea that all the stuff I'd been through counted as a form of expertise as opposed to some secret that I needed to like keep hiding like I had when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
So that was a big shift.
When you said like, like respecting authority, right? And it's like, oh, well, these are doctors, like they know more than me. Like I am very anti-establishment. And so like every diagnosis I received, I was always kind of like, yeah, maybe. No, because it's like the you're not me, so it's like your doctor is not living your experience, but it's also like that dichotomy of you're not living my experience, but I also don't exactly know how to articulate that experience, and just having to really advocate for yourself, like in all sorts of wherever medical stuff is involved, because it is your body, your experience, your health and well-being, it's your life, but it is also that learning that communication of this is what's going on. And I love that you opened by talking about hallucinations, because I had a very similar experience where when I was little, I was like, ooh. I'm like, we're not going to tell people about this. And it was in high school when I finally told somebody for the first time. Then the county got involved, and it was just like this whole thing. And I'm like, you know what? We never need to bring this up again. And then so I didn't tell my counselor, and then the caseworker did. And my counselor was like, were you ever going to tell me anything about this? And I was like, no, I wasn't. And then when I got sober this time, that was because again, like I was going to take that to my grave, but I was like having a mental health crisis. And I called one of the hotlines or something, and she did like this intake questionnaire with me over the phone. We were on the phone for like 45 minutes or something. Wow. And I remember distinctly when she asked me, I don't remember what the question was, but I remember I told her about the hallucinations. And I was like, they're there and I don't know what to do. And that's always been like, even seeking care from professionals, they'll look at my symptomology and they'd be like, okay, yeah, it's probably looking like this. And then we get to that part and they go, but I can't explain that. And then like they'll throw medications at it and nothing's ever worked, nothing's ever stuck. And it's exhausting of being like, in everything I know from pop culture and from what people just flippantly talk about, like this is the crazy symptom. And it's like, and I don't think I'm crazy. Right. So in order to preserve, my image, like nobody can know that I'm crazy. It's like you'll lose respect for me. There's all sorts of fears behind it. So thank you for opening with the crazy symptom.
Well, I mean, and I've found in my experience that telling people about it, like it's amazing how often I get a response like that, where someone says like, oh my gosh, like I've had something similar, or my brother's had something similar, or someone in my life had something similar, and none of us talk about it because it's such like a taboo. It's such a, like, oh, well, that's real crazy.
Like I've had therapists and counselors just ignore it, or they're like, okay, we're not actually going to open that one. But the therapist I've been seeing for the last couple of years, like she's been the first one who's been like, actually, no, like let's open that up. Like we're talking about this, and we've actually kind of like figured a lot out about it. And it was painful and difficult, but like it was like she was the first person who kind of believed in me, right? Of the like, hey, no, you can be living a life better than you are. Like what's going on? Where's the disconnect? And so the importance of just somebody knowing what's going on, and somebody, like whether they have that shared experience or not, being like, no, like you can get better. Sometimes that's enough. Like, because it's like for so long, how long are we feeding ourselves that narrative of like, this is it? Exactly. Like there's nothing after this. There's nothing beyond this. This is just terrible, and this is my fate, and I'm powerless. I didn't ask for this to happen, because I think was that like in your late teens, early 20s? Same thing. It's just like, oh, well, I didn't ask for this to happen. It's not my responsibility to fix. And so then when I started deflecting my symptoms, and it's like, oh, well, now you have your own shit going on, and that's on you for not taking care of your shit. Don't look at, like, I've taken care of my shit. I've put it in a box. It's on the shelf, and now I'm just angry all the time. But,
and it was kind of an excuse for me to stay in a very, like, teenage mindset for a long time, because that's when it had started happening, and there was this kind of sense of, like, well, like, this isn't fair. And so, like, it's not fair, and therefore, like, someone else needs to come and fix everything. And I see that with other people now, that I talk to and work with, and it's one of the hardest things of just sort of recognizing that, like, yeah, it's not fair, and like you didn't ask for this, and you didn't do this to yourself, but like it's your life, and whether it is pushing back on a doctor or saying like, look, this is something that I need you to take seriously, or saying like, I think I can do more. I think I can live a more full life. Like that's something that only we can speak up for ourselves as much as, again, that's not fair. It just kind of is. So yeah.
I can't tell you how many times it's like I have all of these coping mechanisms, right? All these tools that work, but like sometimes, like that bag is so big. The bag of tools is really big. And sometimes I get really tired of carrying it around everywhere, And so it's like, can I just like be unwell? Like, that's my little treat. Can I just be unwell, please?
Yeah. Or sometimes you don't even know. You just feel stuck.
Yeah.
Like, I have all these tools. I don't even know where to begin. Like, I just feel...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that even though I consider myself to be someone who lives in mental health recovery, and so like I've been doing really well for a while now, and I still have bad days and rough times, but for the most part I function in the world the way that I want to, which is huge, but it does require this vigilance, like it does require this kind of awareness of like, okay, is my mood a little too high? Have I gotten enough sleep? Am I eating food? Am I taking my medicine? Am I doing all of the things I'm supposed to be doing to keep myself healthy? And that can get exhausting. And like, there are definitely days where it's like, I would really like to just not have to think about myself.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be really nice to just like go just be a person, but that's, kind of the trade-off. And I'd rather do that and live a life of my choosing, than not do that and be stuck. So, yeah.
No, definitely. It's like, pick your battle. Like, do you want to fight with your coping tools to have a beautiful life, or do you want to fight with your symptoms and stay in whatever shell it keeps you in?
Yeah.
But, like, the mental health space has changed so much, like especially over like the last 20 years, right? So in your lived experience, like how have you seen navigating it change, and like your own personal journey, and then also what you've seen with others with your peer support work?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing is I do think awareness of mental health issues has really gotten better just in my own like adult lifetime even. I mean, there's still a lot of unfortunate representations on like TV and in movies and stuff, but even that I think has gotten a little more accurate. There was a TV show on Netflix, I mean this was 5 or 6 years ago, but the comedian Maria Bamford did this whole sitcom about her bipolar disorder for Netflix. That's just this like absurdist comedic take, but it's real, like it's just very real about the struggle of it and the hard parts of it, and things like that I see kind of popping up more and more where people are willing to kind of grapple with it. So that seems like an improvement. For me personally, the shift from purely clinical treatment, where it is all like doctors and medical experts treating ill patients, to sort of the peer support model, which I don't think are contradictory or separate. I think they work together, but the idea that we can help each other, basically, and that as someone who's lived through these things, I know something about it that a doctor doesn't know, and that there are ways that I can support someone going through something similar to what I've gone through that isn't a replacement for a doctor or a replacement for that kind of care, but can reach different places, can get to a different sort of connection that you can't really have with someone who hasn't lived through it. When I was in the hospital for one of the last times, I started going to a 12-step group called Emotions Anonymous, which is not super well known. And there's only a couple meetings in the state now. I used to go to a meeting at Ridgeview that I really liked, that was just, you could go any night of the week there. And it doesn't exist anymore, sadly. But I still use their literature, and they have some online meetings that you can go to. And the basic idea with Emotions Anonymous is it starts with, I'm not in control of my emotions. and sort of starting with that statement, but going to those meetings and just sitting around with people who were dealing with grief or dealing with depression or dealing with anxiety or dealing with just like the whole gamut of emotional experiences was the first time in my life that I really heard other people share stories like my own. And that just blew my mind. Like, I just never been in a room with like a whole bunch of people who were just willing to be like, yeah, I feel things I don't want to feel, and it's really hard. And that just kind of, I don't know, opened the door to this idea that it really helps to just talk to other people who get it.
Yeah.
And that there's so much power in that. And so I started looking into more of that sort of thing, and that's how I found peer support work, which there's a really great program that Georgia was actually one of the first states, or maybe the first state, to actually get it approved by Medicare to be paid for. But if you become a certified peer specialist, you can work in hospitals and centers and places like that, and the only expertise that you need is your lived experience. And you take a course and you become certified, and you have to keep up with your continuing education, and there's different requirements like that. But it's a way to take the things that have happened to us and turn them into something that can like genuinely help other people, and and helps us in the same process. Like, I do this for a living now, and it's been the best thing for my own recovery, because I spend every day just like listening to people and talking to people and being real with people and trying to make sense of what we're all kind of going through. And not so much trying to fix things. That's one of the big things that we talk about with peer support, is that we can't fix each other. We can just support each other, and we can like be there for each other and help each other find our own solutions, kind of, as opposed to saying like, here's what you should do. Here's the answer.
Yeah.
We can say, here's what worked for me.
Right.
Maybe give that a try, but let's just try. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And at what point, because like a lot of it, like with dealing with emotions, that can be so tricky and sensitive, right? Because like from my own experience, like when I start going down like an anxious spiral, right? It is not going to be beneficial for me in the long run if someone just lets me continue airing out my grievances, right? When I think back, even though it sucked in the moment, the most beneficial thing was always someone literally cutting me off. Like, it was like a trusted person, whether it was a therapist, a sponsor, a close friend, of like stopping me from talking, being like, hey, that's enough of that. Let's redirect this, because you're not going to get anywhere productive with this line of thinking that you're in.
Right.
And so in that work, in the work that you do, how do you navigate that without also potentially causing more harm?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it's a tricky one. Like, there's not really a bright line of like, here's when you intervene, here's when you step back. One of the ways that we talk about it a lot is in terms of connection, and so what we're trying to do is build connections with people. And that involves building trust and building a sort of shared sense of what it is that we're trying to work towards. And so in those relationships, you start to get to know each other, and you start to be able to pick up on those patterns, and you start to be able to say, like, I've heard you say the same thing like a bunch of times in a row. Like, what do you think is going on there? Or like, do you think there's something different that maybe we could try? Or like, is there something that we haven't talked about that maybe is underneath this? And so a lot of it is trying to sort of be kind, but push back when it's the right thing to do without breaking that connection.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the main thing, is that like, the connection is so central, and having that sense of sort of safety with one another is one of the key things. And so learning how to push back gently, but that doesn't always mean kid gloves, like sometimes, like you said, it can mean like, hey, come on, like what you just said doesn't make sense with what you said before, or I feel like you're repeating some things that have been sort of a pattern for you. What's going on there? But again, letting people kind of come to it themselves.
Yeah.
So as opposed to my sort of saying like, you got to stop what you're doing and do something different, to sort of say like, okay, is that working for you? Like, how's what you're doing working right now? Is it helpful to you? And trying to help them have an honest answer to that. and it might be different for different peer support people, but that kind of tends to be my method, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a manager a long time ago, and she said to me, she was like, how many more times are we going to repeat this? And I was like, dang. But for me, that worked. Mm-hmm. But if I say that to, it's not going to work if I say that to somebody that's a little more sensitive.
Yeah.
For me, what I'll do is I'll be like, I try to reword that into like a more gentler way. I heard this today, and this girl was like, how about we take 2 of our brain cells and we make them kiss so they can form a connection to come up with the answers.
Yeah, I like that.
I've never heard that before.
Brain cells need to kiss, make a connection, so we can find the solution.
I love that, because usually it's like, oh, you have 2 brain cells left and they're fighting for dominance. Like,
let's bring them closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an author named Maria Caba who I really like, who wrote a book about intense emotions, basically. And she has this line that I love where she said, if misery loves company, then let's use it to find one another. And I just love that idea of like, if what you want when you're miserable is just for someone to hear you and just for someone to just like acknowledge that you're suffering and that something's wrong and that, something needs to change, to be able to like reach out and find someone who will actually just hear you and sort of say like, oh yeah, like you're actually not crazy. Again, I personally try not to use that word as much as I can, because I think it gets thrown around so much of like, crazy this, crazy that. But to sort of say like, no, like you're in a stressful situation, or your brain is doing things that you don't understand, or the world around you is doing things that you don't understand, or, like there's all kinds of very legitimate reasons why we have these intense feelings, and even psychosis, like that is a response to things.
Yeah.
And, and it's not something that we did or, created. And so to sort of acknowledge like, yeah, that's real. And it's not actually inappropriate to have those feelings or to have that response.
Yeah, because a lot of the times it's like, like what's happening inside of us is happening inside of us, whether or not we want it to. It's like, but what we do outside of us is, for the most part, our responsibility. Like, unless, you have something that makes you act involuntarily.
Right.
It's like kind of like, like back to my example of having an anxious spiral. I can't stop the fact that I'm feeling anxiety. Like, that is real, and pretending that I'm not experiencing anxiety is not going to be helpful.
Right.
But blowing up everyone's phone, being like, do you still love me? Like, do you, am I being annoying? Am I, like, all this stuff?
Yeah.
'Cause that's
Do you hate
stuff,
me?
Yeah, stuff that I absolutely...
If I was a worm, would you still love me?
No. But it's like, these are things, like, I used to act on these impulses, because I'm like, that will immediately solve this anxiety if this person that I love will just tell me that they love me. And it never helped. It never worked, because then they're like, yes, I do. And it's like, well, you're only saying that because I asked.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just, and it would just spiral out of control. And so now it's like, when I feel like, oh, does this person love me? Like, the way my therapist puts it is like, anytime I'll talk to her about my anxiety, she's like, what evidence do we have? And I'm like, listen, Linda, that's not her name. But like, listen, Linda, I don't have any evidence for it, but it's how I feel. And I can't get this feeling to go away, like, no matter how much evidence I throw at it, But having other people to talk to about it, like having like those connections is so, so important, because then you learn people's nurturing styles, right? It's like I knew someone, was very close to them for a long time, and they're the type of person who just is a nurturer, like through and through. Like, if you just need someone to hear you, to hold you, to tell you everything's going to be okay, that's the person to talk to. That never helps me.
Yeah.
And but there's my style of like what helps me is like tough love every time. Like, tell me what I need to be doing. Like, I am a fixer. How do we fix this? What's something I can try to get out of this? But knowing that that's my baseline, when I am in a mood of just like, I just need to air it. Like, I need to let it out. Can I do this right now? Like, I don't want, please don't give me advice. Please just listen to me. And I've learned to communicate that when that time has come, but that's through, trial and error, blowing people's phones up.
Well, and one of the things that you just saying that made me think of is saying, you want someone to tell you it's all going to be okay. That's one of the things that I really almost never say because I don't think it's true most of the time. Like everything's not going to be okay for most of us. Like we're all going to die, like that's no, but you know what I mean? Like ultimately, like things are going to go wrong and people are going to have hard times. And if we tell each other like, oh, no, you're great and fine and everything's going to be fine. It doesn't ring true. And I think when people are really struggling, it doesn't ring true to them. Like if you just say, no, everything's good, and so something that I've really learned is that even though that can feel natural to kind of want to say like, oh, you're going to be fine, but to sort of say, nope, you know what? Like this is hard, period. Like this is tough, period. And I don't need to give you a silver lining or give you a, here's the bright spot kind of thing. Sometimes there isn't a bright spot. And sometimes it's okay to acknowledge like this just sucks and like this is bad and I'm not doing well. And so like we're not going to get stuck there, but sometimes it's okay to pause for a minute and just acknowledge that like, yeah, that's where we are. So what do we want to move towards now? But like, we're not going to just pretend that everything's fine.
No, I love that you said we're not going to get stuck there, but let's pause for a minute. Because I think that is something that, like, I've especially seen in recovery circles is really hard to figure out is like, when do we sit with it and when do we take action? So what, like, either from your own lived experience or through the work that you do, like what has been something that you have found as an indicator of when it's time to take an action versus it's time to sit with this?
Yeah, that's such a good question.
Yeah, good question.
I mean, and I honestly don't have like an immediate answer to
Damn
that.
it.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I should have prepared that one. No, but I mean, I think for me, a lot of times it is, I keep a journal, and it's not like a Dear Diary journal. It's just kind of a few sentences every night that are just kind of like, here's how I'm feeling, here's how today went, just kind of a general check-in with myself. And if I notice that I'm saying the same thing like night after night and I'm complaining about the same thing or I've got the same kind of gripe, then that to me is usually a clue that like, all right, like something needs to be addressed here. This isn't just feelings. This isn't just a mood. Like there's something wrong and something that needs to be looked at and checked into. And, But with the idea of not so much what do I not want, but what do I want? And so with the getting stuck.
What do you want?
Yeah. What do you want?
What do you want?
What do I? No, but
What do you want? No, I'm just sorry. I had to finish it.
Give me a little bit more.
Yeah. Louder.
This is suddenly an episode of Game Changers.
Please yell at me.
I was thinking about the Notebook. What do you want?
I wrote you every day.
Yeah.
No, but I think that sense of it's very easy to get stuck on the past and get stuck on where we are and get stuck on what we don't want. And like, I don't want to be sick and I don't want to be ill and I don't want to be sad and I don't want to, on and on and on. I don't want this. I don't want this. And even just that thought, like, I don't want this, like whatever it is. But to instead try to switch that question with like, okay, I want to be healthy. I want to have a job. I want to do something that feels meaningful with my life. I want to have relationships that feel connected. Like actually thinking about what you want your life to look like, not just what you don't want your life to be.
Yeah.
And that to me is a helpful way of moving forward as opposed to just circling around like, I don't like this. I don't like this.
Yeah, because it's like that focusing on lack, when being like, oh, well, I don't have enough for this, and I don't have enough for this. It's like, okay, well, you have enough for that. So it's like, starting with what you don't have or starting with what you don't want is a great place to start.
Right.
But staying there, not as helpful. So it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be lonely. It's like, okay, well, what's the opposite of lonely? It's like, okay, well, I want to be connected. Okay, what makes you feel connected? Oh, well, I want to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And then it can just go on from there. And suddenly there's like this whole list of things that you want to work towards.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, one time I called Sarah and I said, I was feeling lonely. She said, well, what would make you not feel lonely? And we started talking and it was like, I'm not fucking lonely.
I remember that phone call.
Yeah, I'm not lonely. I have family, I have friends, and I have, and I think that that's difficult for a lot of people because it's like, well, I don't have a significant other. So, but it's like, wait, I have all these other things that fulfill me and bring me joy. and I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I remember one of my core fears, like last year, the year before, was like I was so afraid of being alone. And so I looked at it, I'm like, why is this such a debilitating fear of mine? Yeah. And so I was like, when did I like feel so alone that I'm just so afraid of experiencing that again? And I looked back and I racked my brain. I'm like, oh my God, I'm afraid of something that has literally never happened to me. Like, I have never been alone. Like, I've never been at a spot where I had not even one person to call. Like, I always had at least one person that would talk to me. And so I had like was able to shift and be like, okay, my fear is not of being alone. My fear is abandonment, completely separate issue. But just that pivot of calling it by the right thing helped me to be able to address it better. So when I was spiraling out, if I'm going to be alone, I'm going to be alone, I was communicating the wrong thing. It was, I'm going to be abandoned. And that changed the narrative.
Well, and that's also, I think, where the words that we use, that's where I try to stay away with peers with too much clinical words, because things even like depression or anxiety, that can mean such a range of things to different people. And so, you know, if I say like I'm depressed and you say, oh, I know exactly what that means. Well, you don't necessarily, because, you know, your depression might be different than my depression, or, you know, something like that. So, for example, like if someone says I'm really lonely, instead of saying like, oh, that's hard, you know, to be like, well, what does that mean? You know, like what does that look like for you? What does that mean to you? And trying to kind of dig a little bit deeper instead of just using a word that we all kind of think we know what it means, to actually be like, what do you mean when you say that?
I worked this morning, and one of the girls was like, she's like, what does anxiety feel like to you? Because I said, I take medication. And she's like, what does it make you feel like? I was like, it doesn't make me feel like anything. I'm like, but she's like, well, what is anxiety? And I said, well, for me, I remember my doctor, I was like, I don't know how to explain it. I just have this feel like dread, like, and he was like, you have a sense of impending doom at all times. I was like, yes. So I said, for me, I don't have that sense of impending doom all the time. I would be sitting perfectly happy, and it would feel like, you know, like at the start of a movie where it's like, it would feel like that. Just all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm scared. Like, these words on this paper, they're like, I'm scared of everything around me. There's nothing happening, but I'm scared. And another girl was like, she's like, that's not the feeling I had. She's like, I was overcome by sadness. And it was just these different experiences. And then the other, she's like, see, I didn't know, because she's like, I try to read things online, and she goes, I get tightness in my chest. So she's like, do I have anxiety? And like, she's like, is anxiety because I'm overwhelmed? I don't know what I want to do for my career. Does that mean I need medicine? And we just had like this really cool conversation, but it was really awesome to hear just the different, you know, and it was like a nice little safe circle of like women chattering.
Yeah, because a lot of the times, you know, having a name for it can be helpful to just like quickly communicate, like, this is my list of symptoms, they go by this name. But also it's like that list of symptoms is how many pages long. And so it's like, these ones are mine specifically. Because it's like, when I feel anxiety, sometimes it is the impending doom. Sometimes it's tightness in my chest. Sometimes I can't eat for a week. So it just depends. And like which form it's manifesting in my, and sometimes it's not even in my body. It's just racing thoughts. And it's just like, and that, like, I can use that to communicate with whichever care provider, being like, this is what's going on right now. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, my tools are all jumbled up. I don't know which one to use for this thing. You know, like the medicine isn't going to help this one thing, but the medicine's going to make this other thing worse. And I'm like, I just don't know what to do. And it just sucks. And help, fix it.
Help me.
Sometimes I will tell my therapist, she'll be like, how are you? And I'm like, fix me.
Well, and I think that's what we all kind of want, you know? I mean, like, I mean, I shouldn't say that's what we all want. Who knows? I don't know everyone. But, like, that dream of, like, I want to just step into an office and have some doctor or therapist or something just be like, oh, here's exactly what's wrong, and here's exactly what you need to do to make it all better. And, like, that would be amazing. And maybe that is some people's experience. But I think the more common experience is having to break down that one big wrong into all the different, like you just named 10 different forms of anxiety. And each one of those, I'm sure, has a different sort of cause and a different thing that activates it and a different sort of set of circumstances that you feel it in. And each one of those might have a different response that really is going to be helpful to you, And so I think sometimes when we just say like, well, I have anxiety, and then we're all sort of like, oh, yeah, you have anxiety, but to sort of be like, well, I have a feeling of doom, and I have a tightness in my chest, and I have a panic, and I have, and actually putting words to all the different ways that we feel these things, and that it's not all just one experience, but that there are different situations and different triggers or activators, that are going to set these things off, and that it's okay to recognize that each one of those has its own whole set of things.
Yeah, no, I love that perspective that you just shared about just, ask. Like, how is that for you right now?
Yeah.
Because I think, especially with terms like depression and anxiety, that's become kind of like a panacea, the same way of like, oh, how are you? I'm good. How are you? It's like,
Right.
How are you? I'm anxious. What's good with you? Like,
Yeah.
and then we're just gonna like move past it and be like, oh, do you want to talk about that? Well,
Right.
How is that feeling? Because a lot of the times, like, and myself included, like I'll just like skip right by it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, aren't we all?
Yeah,
Like-
yeah. And sometimes I think that's helpful too. Like I think sometimes kind of normalizing some of those things and saying like, oh yeah, I'm also feeling some ways.
Yeah.
Like it is, even if we're not all feeling the exact same thing, to acknowledge like, oh yeah, I'm also very stressed out by things right now, or whatever, can sort of take that feeling of loneliness off of it. I mean, and I do think
all comes back to loneliness.
yeah. Well,
It all comes back to loneliness.
well, and just that sense of, I mean, we talk about this in Emotions Anonymous and in peer support and I know other 12-step programs, but like you're not alone, and just that basic core idea that we experience these things all by ourselves, and we experience them, alone in bed before we shut our eyes, and that's like the loneliest time, or those moments. And so it's really easy sometimes to think you're the only one who's feeling it, or you're the only one who's experiencing it. And the power of just having someone else be like, yes, I understand what you were saying, and I recognize that. And maybe I haven't felt exactly what you're feeling because we're different people, but I felt something similar.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just something that changed me about that. Like hearing other people mirror back what I was saying and being like, oh my gosh, I recognize myself in that person. I don't know. It just changed my whole perspective on it.
Because I think there's some, like, in some facets, the ego will get in the way of healing, because it's either like, oh, well, nobody gets it. And it's like, well, have you let anyone try? Or that feeling of, we're talking about normalizing, like, oh, yeah, like I have felt something similar too, where it's, because I can definitely, when I was younger, be like, oh, well, no one has ever felt it like this before. And it's like, well, they have. They have. So sorry, younger Sarah. They did. Like there isn't like, especially, being around people in various types of recovery for the last handful of years, there isn't any unique experience. I have yet to come across something where it's like, I haven't, like something I've been through that no one else has been through, or something that someone else has been through that I don't know another person who has been through the same thing, or something very, very similar. There's no unique experiences, which... And again, speaking from my experience, the ego doesn't like, because it's like, oh, like this terrible thing that happened, like just it gave me a reason to, like, it excused something.
Yes.
It excused a bad habit I didn't want to let go. It excused an addiction I didn't want to let go of. It excused behaviors I didn't want to change. It's like, oh, well, this happened to me, so I'm allowed to be like this.
Exactly.
And then someone else would come along and be like, oh, that happened to me too. Like, here's my story. And then I'll be like, fuck, that's way worse than what happened to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if you're acting better than I am, then I have no excuses. Or, and not to like, draw the comparisons or whatnot, but just the whole, someone else has been through it and then like they got through it and they're on the other side of it. And it's not to say things are like perfect and sunshine and beautiful all the time, because things still suck, sometimes things do still suck, but it's just navigating it looks different the more you pursue wellness.
Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, back to the like hearing voices, I mean, that was a big one for me. That was like, well, if you all knew what I was experiencing, you wouldn't expect me to go to school, or like you wouldn't expect me to show up to work, or you wouldn't expect, like if you understood how hard it is in my head right now, you would understand that this is just too much for me. And so then to finally meet other people who are like, no, it's hard in my head too, and like I also hear things, or I also have intense moods, or I also struggle with addiction, or I also, all these different things, to be like, oh, okay, so other people do have these struggles and they're living a life.
Yeah.
And that kind of made it suddenly seem possible in a way that was wonderful, but also really challenging on that whole ego thing.
Yeah.
Like really was like, oh, so that is a possibility.
Yeah, because it's like admitting it's like, I'm wrong. Like,
Yeah.
this is my lived experience. This is how I truly, honestly feel. And I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Like, this is not, like, it's like an experience of feelings not being facts.
Yeah.
And because they can feel so real, especially with a lot of times with anxiety. Like when spiraling out, it's like all those feel so real. Like, yes, it feels like everyone hates me. It feels like everything's going to go to shit. It feels like nothing's going to work out in the end. And it's so real. And I will convince you for so many reasons why that's going to happen based off things that happened in the past.
Right.
The very real things that happened and did not end well and hurt a lot, and I had to go through lots of healing with, but like those things aren't happening right now.
Yeah.
And so it's like, the past doesn't have to repeat itself, but if I let this spiral continue, it will, because then it's going to turn into a tornado named Sarah, and and here we go. But I feel like a lot of this has been really good in terms of, just general like maintenance care, right? Being like, oh yeah, like I'm feeling this type of way. It's not great. It's not terrible. I'm not in crisis yet. But when you are engaging with someone who is in a full-on crisis, where like talking them off the ledge is literal.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How does the approach change?
I mean, the short answer, one of the things that I do for work is answer a warm line for the state of Georgia, which I have the number for, which I'd love to plug before this is over.
Oh, please, absolutely, yeah.
But a warm line is specifically a non-crisis line that anyone who's a Georgia resident can call and just talk to a peer support specialist for up to 20 minutes.
Oh, I've called one of those.
All right. How was your experience?
It was good.
Good. Yeah, it's it can be.
That's it.
I mean, it's going to be different from person to person, and obviously, like, it's human beings answering the phone, so not everyone's going to immediately connect with with everyone. But
it was the first time I ever spoke to somebody about domestic violence, and I just felt heard, and they didn't say, call the police, get a restraining, it was just like, just let's chat.
Yeah.
And like, I remember being like, is this abuse? Like, warm person, please tell me, but it was a nice experience.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of what we do, again, is the, like, not necessarily giving you an answer or saying, like, here's what you need to do to fix things, but just saying, like, that's where the warm comes in. Like, I am a human being who is here listening to you and acknowledging what you're going through and being kind of a witness, kind of saying, like, I see you.
Yeah.
Like, you are real and what you're feeling is real. And so if that's enough to kind of get you through this moment, and then it's still up to you to like make your choices and figure out what you need to do. But so in that context, if someone calls and is like actively going to harm themselves or something like that, then like I am not a clinician, and so I would recommend that they call 988, the crisis number, or something like that. But short of that, like if someone's in a really, really bad place, let's say, not necessarily in danger, but just in an emotional crisis, or just can't stop crying or panicking, or, we do get those calls of someone calling and saying, like, I am right now having a panic attack. What do I do? And that's where I'm a big believer in our physical bodies being a really, really helpful way to get out of our brains. So things like, it sounds so simple, but like grounding exercises.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorites is 10 toes on the floor. You can do it with shoes on, you can do it barefoot, but you just press your big toes into the floor and then press the next toe into the floor and then just keep doing that over and over again. And it just reminds you that you are a physical body in physical space, and sometimes allows you to pull out of your brain for just a few minutes. And sometimes that few minutes can be enough to kind of break the rumination cycle, you know, and kind of break that spiral that people get stuck in.
Yeah. For a long time, I kept peppermints on me.
Yes,
Because my favorite was to bite into a peppermint.
That's a great one. That's a really good one. Or like holding an ice cube. That's a really good one, that if you can find an ice cube, or if it's cold outside, just like stepping out for a minute and just feeling the temperature change.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff like that that sound simple and sound kind of obvious, but you don't think about that yourself when you're in that panicky place. You're just sort of like, I'm panicking.
Yeah.
And so just to have another person say, all right, you know, let's take a deep breath and let's feel your fingers, let's feel your toes, you know, let's name a heavy object in the room near you, name something you can smell right now.
Yeah.
You know.
The five senses.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, just,
I love this. I saw something recently that says the five senses doesn't work for me, because they'll be saying, give me 5 things you can see, like 5 bitches I'm mad at. Like, I was like, oh, I never thought about it that way, because 5 senses, I always hate, like, whenever like I'm at a point when someone pulls the 5 senses out at me, I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And then I do it.
Yeah.
But then by the end of it, like, I'm always mad to start, because I'm never doing the 5 senses on my own unless I'm like actively crying and driving my car.
Right,
you know?
right.
Then I'll do the 5 senses on my own. But I'll be so mad. But then by the end of it, I'm just like, you know what? Like, nothing's a big deal. Like, every time I get mad that it works.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the thing, is it's not about making things 100% better. It's about making things like 10% better. You know, it's about saying, like, I can't solve all of my problems right this moment, but I can make them just a little more manageable. And I can just find 1 or 2 things that are going to get me through the next 12 hours or get me through the next 1 hour.
Yeah.
You know, get me to bedtime. And that whole, like, one day at a time thing applies here just as much as anywhere else. Where it's like, there's something I can choose to do today that I might not be able to do forever, but I can choose to do it today.
Yeah.
You know, and I keep referring back to Emotions Anonymous because it really was so impactful
Bring it
for
back.
me. But one of the texts or things that they read every meeting there is something called the Just for Today's. And it was actually, and I think they use it in some other 12-step situations too, but it was actually developed for female victims of domestic violence. That's where that whole list came out of. And it was written specifically for women who had been physically or emotionally abused. And so much of it is about agency and about saying, like, I have a choice, you know, like, just for today, the choice is mine. I can choose to do this. I can choose to do that. And it might not, maybe none of my choices seem great to me, but like, I've got choices. And so just kind of bringing people back to that sense of, you can't always help how you feel, but you can help how you respond to that feeling. And 10% better is better. So
And then like over time, like I think like what happened for me was like, where like everything, like I had a sponsor who, my favorite phrase I ever took from her was, you don't know the difference between a heart attack and a hangnail. Because every time I called her, it was a crisis. Everything was a crisis. I'm just like, it was the end of the world. Anytime there was any kind of inconvenience, whether it was big or small, I had the same reactions to it. But then over time, learning like what those indicators are within myself. So like when something wasn't actually that, like, so it's like, you know, like when people say like you're having a bad day and then you drop a pen and you start crying, but you're not crying because you dropped a pen. It was just like, of course you dropped a fucking pen. So I'd like learn before I got to the point where I'm crying over dropping a pen, being like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. Like today I'm in this space and I don't have to let this space control my actions today, but I do need to be conscious of this is where I'm at. So maybe I should, because there's times where it's like, I'm the type of person that will get like married to my routine and I will get legalistic about it, even if it means sacrificing, like if it means sacrificing sleep just to make sure I do all of the things I said I was going to do, I will do that. But that hurts me in the long run and like leads more towards a point of crisis, right? And so now it's like, okay, you know what? Like it is okay if I miss the gym this morning because I didn't go to bed early enough to be able to wake up to get adequate sleep to go do all the things. You know, it's like if I start my day off with enough sleep, then maybe I won't be a bitch at work. Yeah. And like, because catching myself is especially when I know like, oh, I'm not treating people the way that I think I should. I'm not showing up for people the way that I would like to. Like, what is going on before I get to a point of fuck you, fuck your mom, like fuck. Like everyone sucks. No one ever talked to me again. I'm moving to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And so it's just learning myself, and that would have to be from, again, people like stopping the anxious spiral, being like, nope, you've already said this. Nope, you're not being productive right now. Like, let's pivot. Let's move into a new direction.
Yeah.
And it's like, and none of that was fun or comfortable or any of those things. But I'm so grateful that all of it happened because it's like today, it's like, oh, okay, someone called out of work. Cool. We will regroup. What can we get done? You know,
and learning to sit with discomfort, learning to sit with uncomfortable feelings, with intense emotions, with intense cravings, and you know, I mean, the whole gamut of things. Recognizing that, like, okay, I can tolerate this for at least 60 more seconds, you know, like, and just breaking it into that small of a step, you know, again, of like, I don't have to do this forever, but I just need to do this for right this minute and get through this minute, and then we'll deal with the next minute, you know. And I'm also a big believer in like celebrating little tiny successes, and just like, you know, like if someone is calling our warm line and they're in just an incredibly low mood and haven't been able to leave the house for days and just, you know, or just crying and can't seem to move past it, but to be like, hey, have you taken a shower today? Let's make that your number one goal. Like, let's take a shower and celebrate that you took a shower, you know, and like celebrate that you made yourself a sandwich, like celebrate that you got out of bed. Like, those are all things that were really, really, really hard for that person that day, you know, and it's worth recognizing that and saying, like, you know what, you did something really hard, and the world might not tell you that that's hard. You know, society might say, like, shut up and make your bed and take a shower and go to work or whatever. But like, I hear how hard that was for you. And, you know, I want you to know that, like, I see that, like, you did that, and that's awesome and worth celebrating. And so what's the next thing we can do? You know, like, what's the next goal that you think you can do after that? So,
back when I had a hard time getting out of bed, because I wasn't making my bed in the mornings either. And so I would get out of bed and I would make my bed. And so I would start my day with something that I did, something that I completed. And so then it could, like, the idea was it would, like, be a succession of more things I completed. But there were some days where it's like, you know what? I made my bed and that's it. Like, that's all I did. I did it though.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, I tell people a lot of times, like, make a list of 3 things and let 2 of them be really easy. You know, like 3 things you want to do today, and let one of them be like, you know, just like brush your teeth or whatever. Like something you know you can do and you will do, but just so you can check it off and just say, like, I did that. I took care of myself in some small way. And recognize that, like, that counts for something.
You know, because if not doing it counts for something, then doing it should count for something too, damn it.
And we all beat ourselves up for all the stuff that we don't do all the time, you know, like all the little things that we don't do. And I just think about, you know, how easy it is to get mad at yourself for, like, forgetting something dumb. So if I'm going to get that mad at myself for something silly, I might as well celebrate things that are, you know, equally small, but like that I did. So
equal and opposite. Wow. I feel like a lot of good nuggets have been shared tonight. You have definitely shed light on so many perspectives. I think, like, I don't know. I think this has just been a beautiful conversation. I've very much enjoyed it. So thank you again for coming down here.
Can I give the 888 number for the warm line?
Yes, please
tell us the warm line and where people can find you also.
Yeah, so it's the warm line is operated under the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, and that's who I work for also. But the number is 888-945-1414. And that reaches 5 different call centers around, not call centers, but actual centers with people around the state. And you can call them up to twice a day and talk for up to 20 minutes. And anyone who lives in Georgia can call. You don't have to have any particular diagnosis. You don't have to have any particular, you know, anything. If you just want to talk, that's the only requirement. And it's 24 hours, holidays, every day of the week. There's always someone there answering the phone. And so I really recommend that if people are just in a place where they just feel like you said, before it gets to the boiling point, before it gets to you're crying because you dropped your pen, like just call and talk to someone and just tell them how you're feeling. And it's not going to solve everything, but it might make you feel just like enough better to figure out the next step. And that's kind of what we're hoping for. So, I'm not really on social media, so I don't have much to plug in terms of that.
That's why your mental health is so good.
Yeah. Well, it was a choice I made for my mental health a little while ago, but I think I put a link in somewhere.
I have it.
That links to some of the writing that I've done that's online.
Cool.
So some things like that are in there. But this has been such a treat. Thank y'all.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Check out the Most High Media app in the description box below on YouTube, where you can find this episode and previous episodes, as well as documentaries and more recovery-based original content. You can also follow Most High on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And the show is made possible from the Georgia Opioid Crisis Abatement Trust. Thank you, and thank you to our donors and sponsors. This has been the Most High Show. Thank you.
Thank you.